Configuring switch security part 2. We are going to pick up right where we left off in part 1. Part 1, we walked through configuring the passwords on a Cisco switch, locking it down, and then talking about understanding, and I guess we also set up SSH to secure our remote administration of these devices. Now the last thing I want to do, and what this video is focused on, is setting up port security. So let's get going. What port security is a way to lock down what devices can plug into your switch or how many devices can plug into your switch. There's a lot of situations where you might want to limit people in their cubicles to only connecting one device. That will prevent them from bringing in their own little switches and hubs from home and building their own little mini networks in their cubicle. Now, I know that sounds far-fetched, but that's actually a lot more common than you may think. Just about every company has one or two of those people. The problem with people building these little mini networks in their cubicle is that those networks can interfere with your production network, and I've seen it happen many times. So you may want to lock down and limit who can or how many devices can plug into a switch port. Likewise, there are some organizations that take it one step further. Switches learn MAC addresses. That's their goal. Some organizations will say, we only want this MAC address to plug into that switch port, meaning we have one device plugged in there, and if anybody disconnects that device and plugs in a different device, I want it to shut off that switch port. That is a big level of security because it's a lot of maintenance, because anytime somebody moves the device, you got to get IT involved in recoding all those MAC addresses on a switch port, but it is a very secure way of doing things. So let me walk you through, you're watching this cursor blink, let me walk you through just the basic setup of this. I'm going to get into privilege mode on this switch, and I'm going to show you my favorite Cisco command of all times. It is show IP interface brief. It works on switches and it works on routers. What it does is give you a flyby view of what IP addresses the router has, thus the show IP, but also my main thing is what interfaces the switch or router has. And it's in a brief format, so you just get a table list of all these interfaces, the IP address, and their status. And you can see on this switch right now, we have the VLAN 1 interface with that IP address we gave it a couple videos ago. We have Fast Ethernet 0/1, which is currently status of up. That's the physical layer. It's physically up. And the line protocol is up. That's the data link layer. It's communicating on the network, so we have a good link there. Now, I can tell you this is the link that connects this switch back to where I'm standing right now. It's a couple rooms away. Now, what I've got is I have a port that's plugged into Fast Ethernet 0/5 that I'm going to plug in. Now, I'm going to type in a command we haven't seen yet called terminal monitor. What that allows you to do is see all of the messages that come from the switch from a telnet session, or I'm actually using SSH to access this switch right now. What I mean by messages is like when I exit out of configuration mode, you ever notice you get this message saying configured by such and so on? That's just a status message to let you know what's going on. They may seem annoying at first, but they actually give you a lot of good info of what's happening. For example, I am going to plug in right now my laptop into a switch port that's on there. Without having the monitoring set up, I'd never know if a device connected. There I go. I've got the port connected. It shows the interface changed to up. That's physically something connected. And then the line protocol just went up. That means that it got data link communication with that device. So now that I have a device connected, I'll do a show MAC address table. Oh, it's probably the new command. Show MAC space address table. Some of the older switches, most of the older switches, have show MAC dash address dash table. Now they have show MAC space address dash table. One more thing to remember, right? So you've got the MAC address table here. These are all static MAC addresses that belong to the switch. If I scroll down, there's a lot of them, I can see the dynamic MAC addresses that it learned. Now you can see the Fast Ethernet 0/1 that links back to my office. It's got a few MAC addresses because that's actually a link to another switch. And right here is the port I just brought up. That's my laptop, Fast Ethernet 0/5. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into global configuration mode, and let's say that I would like to configure MAC address security on that port. I want to make sure that only this laptop is able to connect to that port, nothing else. So I'll jump under Interface, Fast Ethernet 0/5. Now, a few videos back, we went into the VLAN interface. That was the logical interface for the switch that allowed us to manage different functions of the switch. Right now, I'm accessing one of the physical interfaces of the switch, the fast Ethernet 0/5. It's literally port 5 on the switch. Underneath there, I'm going to type in the command switch part mode access. You can see me fumble around with the tab key a lot of times to finish the command for me. Switch port mode access is a command that I can use to hard code this as an access port. Now, an access port means that this is connected to an end device, a PC, a server, a router. Essentially, it's telling it it's not connected to another switch. The alternative to access is actually a mode known as trunk. We'll talk about that, probably not in this series. That's in the CCNA series when we talk fully about VLANs. But until then, we'll just say switch port mode access hard codes this port as a port connecting to a PC. Once I do that, I can then enable port security. I'm going to type in switch port security. Enter. That is like a little power switch I just flipped on behind the scenes to turn on port security on this port. It is now enabled for port security, but it still needs me to tell it what I want it to do. How do I want to secure this port? So I'll say switch port security, hit the question mark, and the first thing that I'll do is I'll say the maximum MAC addresses on this interface is 1. Enter. If you ever wanted to keep somebody from plugging in multiple devices into your switch, meaning plugging a hub in there or plugging another switch in their cubicle and attaching different laptops and PCs and so on, this is your way of doing it. That will limit them to only attaching one MAC address or one device. Next, I'm going to type in switch port security violation. Now, this will allow me to say what do I want to do if somebody violates my policy, meaning they plug multiple devices in. By default, it will do shutdown. Shutdown is great because you immediately know if it happened. If somebody plugs in 2 devices into that switch port using a hub, and the port will shut down. The only way it's going to come back on is if you unshut it or do a no shutdown under the interface. So that'll require probably the employee that did the offense coming to you and saying, hi, I did this, I'm sorry, I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. And you say, okay, great, thanks for telling me, let me power your switch back or your port back on. That's the default. Now the other two are protect and restrict. Now I will tell you, this is one of the most poorly documented areas I've ever seen. If you ever go to Cisco's website and try and figure out what the difference of those two are, it's very difficult to find it. Let me tell you right now. Protect and restrict do virtually the same thing. Meaning, if somebody attaches more than one MAC address, it will just ignore it. Meaning, the initial MAC address, the one MAC address will still work, but any extra devices that you attach beyond one MAC address, it'll just say, sorry, I'm not listening to you, and those devices can't access the network. The difference then between these two commands is protect will just ignore it. Restrict will ignore it and log it when it happens. I would highly suggest using restrict over protect because at least if it's happening, you'll know about it. Meaning you'll get messages on your switch saying, hey, somebody is trying to violate your policy on fast Ethernet 0/5. It's not going to shut down their port, but what it will do is at least let you know that it is happening, that somebody is trying to do this. Protect, you will never know. So I'll just keep it at the default, which is shutdown, because I like that. So we've got the maximum MAC address is 1. We've got the violation set up. Last command I want to show you on the port security is the MAC address command. Oh, there we go, MAC address. So I've got MAC address typed in there. I'll hit question mark, and you can see you either can type in the MAC address, meaning what MAC address do you want to allow under here, or use this option called sticky. I'll talk about sticky in just a moment. But hard coding the MAC address means that I will go to my switch or to the device that I'm plugging in there, and I will say, right there, fast Ethernet 0/5, this, I'll do a copy and paste. That is the MAC address that I want to allow. 48-bit MAC address, that's 48-bit MAC address right there, and I hit enter. By adding the MAC address field, it's not only going to say, okay, I'm only allowing one MAC address, but now I've dictated exactly what MAC address is allowed. It's 0015 da 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 da, which is the laptop that I have plugged in there right now. Now, you can imagine that is quite a hassle. If you're going around trying to find the MAC addresses of all the devices that are allowed, that's why Cisco introduced this sticky command. What it does is take kind of a calculated risk, meaning if you think that your network is at a state of currently being good, meaning all of the devices that are plugged in right now are the devices that are supposed to be plugged in, you can take a calculated risk and use the sticky command. What it will do is automatically hard code whatever MAC addresses are assigned to the ports right now into the running configuration. Let me show you. Do a show running config, hit enter. Scroll down, scroll down. There is my fast Ethernet 0/5. You notice that I have port security, MAC address sticky, and then it says MAC address sticky and has the MAC address right there. Now, I never typed that command in there. I didn't. It generated that for me based on the device that's plugged in there right now. Now, the cool thing is I can save my configuration, and now from there on out, that will be the only device that's allowed to plug into that port. That saves me from having to go to the device and get its MAC address or do show MAC address and type in all of those manually. It will just learn what's ever on there by default. Cool. So, with that being said, let's see. Oh, one thing I should mention is, you remember I typed in that switchport port security maximum 1, which allows one MAC address? Notice it's not in the running configuration. That command is missing. That's because that's the default. It will only show up if I type in something beyond the defaults. Let me show you. I'll get into global config mode, into interface fast Ethernet 05, and I'll type in switchport port security maximum 2. Now I'll just type in, I haven't talked about this command yet. It's the do command. I'll type in do show run interface fast Ethernet 05. Do will allow you to run show commands from whatever mode you're in. I hit enter, and now you can see maximum 2 shows up there. But if I change it back to maximum 1 and do that same command to just see it, notice it's gone because maximum 1 is the default. All right, now we need some action. What I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of interface configuration mode, and I'm going to type in a command that lets me see my port security. I'm going to type in show switchport, or actually it's show port security, and I'll say interface fast Ethernet 0/5. I want to see the port security for just that interface. I hit enter, and here's the information I can gather. Enabled. It is currently, the status is secure up, meaning that it is a secure port and it is currently in an up state. Now I'm going to unplug my laptop right now. Let me just reach down and pull the cord. And you can see the status just went to down. I'll do the same command again, show port security interface fast Ethernet 05, and you can see it's now secured down. I want to make sure you catch that secure up and secure down don't really mean that a security violation has happened. So when you see secure down, don't think, oh no, it's down. That means it's violated something. It hasn't been violated unless you see this little counter at the bottom tick up. It says security violation count currently 0. Whenever somebody violates the policy, this little counter will go up and up and up. Remember I said the difference between protect and restrict is restrict will tell you when it's happening. When we were talking about the switchport violation mode, that's what you can see right here. Restrict will actually increment that counter, whereas protect will not. You can even see the last source MAC address to violate the policy. How many sticky MAC addresses it's learned is 1. Total MAC addresses and maximum MAC addresses it's allowing is 1. So, I know you're anxiously holding your breath because you're waiting for me to violate the security policy. That's what I'm going to do. I've got a second laptop here. You don't even want to know how many laptops I have sitting in my home here. It's goofy. I'm going to plug my second laptop in. You can see that it has changed state to up. And the second device that I'm using is actually the one I'm talking to you on right now. I'm going to generate some traffic. I'm just going to open a command prompt. Oh, you know what? This will be interesting because I have 2 interfaces on this one. Let me just see if I can see, it's using my other interface to communicate. Let's see. How can I generate some traffic on there? I got it. Oh, You know what? I didn't have to. It did it for me. It looks like my computer just randomly sent a packet. It could have been a broadcast. Who knows what it was. But you see what happened on the screen. It says immediately, error disable. Port secure violation error detected on Fast Ethernet 05. I'm putting Fast Ethernet 5 in error disable state. It says security violation occurs caused by this MAC address. Shunk, right there. On port Fast Ethernet 05, we've changed the state to down. Excellent. I'm going to hit the up arrow again and do that same command, show port security interface Fast Ethernet 05. And notice what the state has changed to. It is now secure. Instead of down, it's shut down. And it has ticked the security violation up by 1 to show me that there is a PC that has violated the policy. And if you want to know who it is, it's the one with that MAC address. Now your challenge is to, in your organization, find out where that MAC address is that's violating your policy. So that is the port security function of Cisco switches. It can be very handy to lock down, if not all of your ports, because it can be quite a hassle if you use this for every single one. I would say this is a very useful thing for public ports. A lot of times you'll see Ethernet ports installed in lobbies, in break rooms, in areas that anybody can get to, and that port is a link into your network. So you want to make sure that you lock it down to only allowed devices, and that way if somebody comes in and tries to hack into your network with their personal device, it'll shut the port down on them. So yeah, I think that's about all I had to say about that, as Forrest Gump would say. So if I do a show port security instead of just focusing on an interface, it will show me all of the interfaces that are in my organization and what their current status is. Now, I only configured one interface for port security, but let me show you the mega command. I can type in interface range fast Ethernet 0/ we'll say 2 through 24. That will configure all 24 interfaces at the same time. When I was doing it, I just went under 5, and every command applied to that. This is a way to lock down your whole organization at once. I'll do switch port mode access, switch port, port security, turn them all on, and now I can start typing in my port security commands for all of those interfaces. I jump back out and do the show port security command one more time from privilege mode, and now I can see all of the interfaces and what the current action and current violation accounts are. You can see that Fast Ethernet 05 is the only one that currently has a security violation in its counter, and you can see what action it's going to take if those are violated. So that's a way that you can set up your whole organization for port security. Ha! I'm actually laughing at myself. I actually thought for a moment that I could try and squeeze that into the previous video. We would have had like an hour-long video if that were the case. So I'm glad that I broke it off and gave port security its own dedicated section. So what we did to wrap up security in general is we went through and set up passwords on our switches between this and the previous video, setting up the console password, telnet passwords, enable password and enable secret passwords, locking that thing down. We set up a message of the day banner, so everybody that logs into our device will get a message saying, do not log in. We also understood SSH, that is the encrypted version of Telnet that we can use to manage our devices and is much more secure than just base Telnet usage. The last thing we did, and that's what this video was focused on, was setting up port security. By default, Cisco switches will allow as many devices as you want to attach to your switch ports. So using port security, I can lock it down and say only this number of devices are allowed and only this device based on its MAC address is allowed.